Okay, everybody. What we're talking about today is war crimes in Texas, and there's evidence of it all over the place. Um, I previously published a video called Texas and Other American States Are Under Military Occupation, and that kind of goes into some of this stuff about why there's a military occupation. So we're going to cover a few things about why there's a military occupation. I've had actually people had me contact me disputing that Texas is under a military occupation, and I can't imagine how anybody with two brain cells can't figure that out. But anyway, so I'm going to go into it a little bit more to show that that's what's happening. Um, One of the things about the military occupation, the reason they want to orchestrate a military occupation is because martial law supersedes and replaces common law. They want to get rid of that nasty little common law problem because at common law, they'd all be put to death. Anyways, this is taken from the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms, 1775, the Founding Fathers. Statutes have been passed extending the course of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. And it's a military dictatorship, folks. That's exactly what it is. The Founding Fathers understood that. That's what a despotism is. Founding Fathers understood that, and we need to quit drinking that fluoridated water so we can see what's going on. This is taken from a book called The Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellen to the Utah Supreme Court in a case, and this is related to a case called Diet versus Turner. And he says the same thing, but he says it in a little bit different way. He says, in the meantime, civil law was a form of law imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what is called equity in its place. And how many times have you heard of a judge where you go into a courtroom and you'll say stuff like, well, the Constitution says this, or common law says this, and the judge will interrupt you and he'll say, there's no Constitution doesn't apply in here, and I don't want to hear another word about it. Or common law doesn't apply in here, and I don't want to hear another word about it. And this is why, right here. It's all under equity. Even in the federal Title 28 United States Code, it says that the federal courts are courts of admiralty and equity. Okay? No common law. There's no common law offenses against the United States. Only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command are crimes. That's the Seventh Circuit, United States versus Hudson and Goodwin, which is citing United States versus Coolidge, which goes back to 1816 Supreme Court. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. Same thing in Arizona, same thing in every other state that I've been in. Okay, it's all the same. Everything is in admiralty. This is a quote from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Under the definition of admiralty, it says, a writ of error doth not lie upon a sentence in admiralty, but an appeal. And that's taken from Book 4 of the Institutes and the Laws of England by Coke, which goes back to the 1500s. And the point I want to make is that why do you think there's all these courts of appeals all over the place? Okay, that's because it's admiralty. Appeals are in admiralty. It's the same thing that precipitated the War of Independence. Police use the rank structure, military rank structures like captain, lieutenant, sergeant. The military script circulates for money. That's Federal Reserve notes, Bank of Canada notes, Bank of England notes, Bank of France notes, whatever, it doesn't matter. military uniforms used by police and judges, the wearing of clerical dress or religious habit on the part of layfolk is liable to the same penalty on the part of the state as the misuse of the military uniform. And that's in Article 10 of the Concordat of 1933 between Hitler and the Roman cult. And so even judges wear military uniforms. This is Article 1 of the Lieber Code. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading or occupying army. Whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of the hostile army proclaims its martial law. Well, I think everybody knows that Texas was invaded by the the Union after when the Civil War was coming to an end, and so Texas at that time was under a military occupation. So then the next question is how does it end? Well, we're going to find out here shortly. This is the Law and Customs War on Land, Hague Convention 4, Article 42. Territory is considered occupied when it is actually placed under the authority of the hostile army. The occupation extends only to the territory where such authority has been established and can be exercised. Okay, well, gee, that sounds like Texas. Article 2 of the Lieber Code. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the Commander-in-Chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war, when the occupation of a place or territory continues beyond the conclusion of peace as one of the conditions as of the same. So, the point being is there was never a Treaty of Peace between Texas or the Confederacy and the United States. There's been no treaties of peace, and there's been no proclamations by the Commander-in-Chief ending the martial law. So it continues to this day. We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. Well, hello, folks. Don't you think that's evidence of martial law? That's exactly what's going on. Why do you think you see the police murdering people every night on national television? This is Article 2, the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in a time of war of 1949. And it says, in addition to the provisions which shall be implemented in peacetime, the present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war or of any other armed conflict which may arise between two or more of the high contracting parties, even if the state of war is not recognized by one of them. The convention shall also apply to all cases of partial or total occupation of the territory of a high contracting party, even if the said occupation meets with no armed resistance. And so this is actually, again, that book on the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court related to the case Diet versus Turner. And here he's talking about, this is his comments on the Lieber Code Article 3, and we'll talk about what it says. Anyways, he says, note, under the law of martial, only the criminal jurisdiction of a military court is the recognized law. But as Article 3 says, the civil courts can continue wholly or in part as long as the civil jurisdiction does not violate the military orders laid down by the Commander-in-Chief or one of his commanders. By this means, a military venue, jurisdiction, and authority are imposed upon the occupied populace under the disguise of the ordinary civil courts and officers of the occupied district or region, because the so-called civil authorities in an occupied district or region only act at the pleasure of a military authority. It should also be noted here that the several state legislatures, county boards of commissioners, and city councils are constantly legislating to please the edicts of the federal government, the occupying force, and that their legislation in this sense is not an exercise of state sovereignty, but instead a compliance with edicts of the military force which occupies the several states and consequently are edicts of martial law rule. I think it speaks for itself. This is Article 6 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in a time of war of 1949. Some people say that this thing doesn't apply today. Well, there's where it says it does. The present convention shall apply to, from the outset of any conflict or occupation mentioned in Article 2. We already discussed that. In the territory of parties to the conflict, the application of the present convention shall cease on the general close of military operations. In the case of occupied territory, the application of the present convention shall cease 1 year after the general close of military operations. However, the occupying power shall be bound for the duration of the occupation to the extent that such power exercises the functions of government in such territory by the provisions of the following articles of the present convention. And so there's like about 30 articles there that are still fully effective forever, as long as that military occupation goes on. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so that you're notified when there's a new upload. This is the front page of the channel, and notice there's an arrow pointing at the bell. The subscribe button would normally be red, and it's got a check mark, so it's been already clicked. But the bell hasn't been clicked. When you click on the bell, a little pop-up comes up, and there's a box you check. And then when you click OK, then the bell all of a sudden looks like it's ringing. And this one doesn't look like it's ringing. So back to the topic at hand. Clerks masquerading as judges. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts in administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely acts as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not a discretionary capacity. How many times have you been in one of these so-called courts and the judge is sitting there practicing law from the bench, or the judge is sitting there taking instructions from the prosecutor? I mean, hello, don't you see what's going on? It is the accepted rule, not only in state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing an administrative law, they are described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a bought and paid for ministerial clerk for an agency. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature and otherwise, act as mere clerks of the involved agency. Where any state proceeds against a private individual in a judicial forum, it's well settled that the state, county, municipality, etc., waives any immunity to counters, cross claims, and complaints by direct or collateral means regarding the matters involved. Bought and paid for clerks. When enforcing mere statutes, judges of all courts do not act judicially and thus are not protected by qualified or limited immunity. And there you go, there's a kangaroo court right there. See the whore up at the front and his hired thug, and then the liars. You see the liars in there? A clerk masquerading as a judge is not competent to do anything judicial like issue orders or warrants. A clerk masquerading as a judge is operating in his private capacity and has no immunity. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. It's a fraud. It's a void judgment. It's fraud upon the court. Fraud upon the court is fraud which is directed to the judicial machinery itself and is not fraud between the parties or fraudulent documents, false statements, or perjury. It is where the court or a member is corrupted or influence is attempted, or where the judge has not performed his judicial function. In other words, where impartial functions of the court have been directly corrupted. And that's Bullock versus United States, the 10th Circuit. Where there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Saya. And that's a quote in this federal court case, Manning versus Ketchum, but they're quoting a U.S. Supreme Court case, Bradley versus Fisher, located at 13 Wallace, 335. And they quote 10 Coke 68, which goes back to the Coke's commentaries on the laws of England in the 1500s. Statutes. A penal action is an action on a penal statute, an action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Why do you think they call it the Texas Penal Code? Where an action is founded entirely upon a statute and the only object of it is to recover a penalty or forfeiture, such action is a penal statute. See all these words in here about statutes? Okay, this is always about a statute. So then the judge is bought and paid for a clerk, right? See, there's one of the kangaroo courts there. The words penal and penalty in their strict primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement. So where's the contract? What they're doing is they're assaulting you with one of their so-called contracts. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute, and the only object is to recover a penalty. Okay, so when it's founded entirely upon a statute, that means the judge is a bought and paid for a clerk. It's a commercial transaction. Okay, that's exactly what it is. They're assaulting you with some commerce. Okay, this is all coming from the Rome cult. We're going to assault this guy with some commerce, and we're going to make some money. Woohoo! A penal action is one founded entirely on statute, and the only object is to recover a penalty or a forfeiture imposed as a punishment for a certain specific offense, while a remedial action is one which is brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. A penal action is a civil suit brought for the recovery of a statutory forfeiture with a bought and paid for a clerk masquerading as a judge when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. Such actions are civil actions, on the one hand closely related to criminal prosecutions, on the other actions private injuries which the party agreed may by statute recover punitive damages. That's why the bail priest up at the front, the bought and paid for a clerk, if you nail him down about the nature of the action, he'll say it's quasi-criminal, okay? Because they're assaulting you with one of their quasi-contracts. If you think this is for your protection, you clearly have no idea what's going on. All they need is a contract. It's impossible to prove jurisdiction exists absent a substantial nexus with the state, such as a voluntary subscription to license. All jurisdictional facts supporting claim that supposed jurisdiction exists must appear on the record of the court. And if there's nothing there supporting their claim of jurisdiction, then they don't have jurisdiction. Check out our YouTube channel. Here's we have a Republic of Texas YouTube. We have a customized link to our YouTube channel. Check out our website. Check out our blog and our email address if you want to contact us. And we have 2 Twitter channels as well, Texas Republic for You and We Are Texians. Anyway, so back to the topic at hand. This is all coming from the Roman cult. I said that before. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, for when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but the nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks. And that's today, folks. To be bound in conscience to account to assestic use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. This is all coming from the Roman cult. A sunset. Remember I talked to you about the quasi-contract. A sunset. In its origin, an action of tort was soon transformed into an action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy where there was neither tort nor contract based only upon an express promise. It was afterwards supported upon an implied promise and even upon a fictitious promise. Okay, so this is where these bail priests just kind of twist it all around and come up with all sorts of stuff. Anyways, introduced as a special manifestation of the action on the case, it soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action which superseded debt, became concurrent with account and case upon bailment, a warranty, and bills of exchange. See, I mean, think about it. What they're doing is they're fabricating a debt. They want bills of exchange, okay, Federal Reserve notes, okay. I mean, this is all and completed and competed with equity in the case of the essentially equitable quasi contracts. Okay, remember, nothing's under common law, it's all under equity or admiralty. Growing out of the principle of unjust enrichment, surely it would be harder to find a better illustration. Okay, you can tell there's liars that put this together. Surely it would be hard to find a better illustration of the flexibility and power and self-development of the common law. And the history of assumption and 3 select essays in Anglo-American legal history, 1909. That's actually cited in Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Both in Roman and English law, there's a certain obligation which were not in truth contractual, but which the law treats as if they were. They are contractual in law, but not in fact, being the subject matter of a fictitious extension of the sphere of contract to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. And so they just assault you with one of their little quasi-contracts, okay? Again, this is all martial law. Constructive quasi-contracts are based solely upon the legal fiction or fiction of law. Remember the Sesticate Trust. It is well settled rule of law that he who seeks the benefits of contract must also assume the burdens, okay? Well, you know, jail's a benefit, okay? I mean, at common law, they just put you to death, okay? So jail's a benefit. So they're giving you a benefit. That's your benefit. And so that's exactly what's going on here, folks. Voluntary acceptance of benefit or transaction is equivalent to consent to all obligations arising from it so far as facts are known or ought to be known to the person accepting. Again, what a scam. These people, this is all satanic. A quasi-contractual action presupposes acceptance and retention of a benefit by one party with full appreciation of the facts under circumstances making it inequitable for him to retain the benefit without payment of its reasonable value. Okay, so they just assault you with one of their contracts and their equity and get their extortion. It's a racketeering enterprise is what it is. They're extortion racket. It's a kangaroo court. It's a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which a person's rights are totally disregarded and in which the result is a foregone conclusion because of the bias of the court or the tribunal. Okay, well, so the point is that these are all, this is one of the war crimes that's going on, okay, because they're supposed to give you a fair trial, a neutral and unbiased judge, and they're just nothing but a bunch of crooks. They're a gang of thieves. The judge works for the state, the prosecutor works for the state, the police or witness works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the pigs, all represent the same party, and since no corpus delicti mens rea or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. They're a bunch of thieves. This is Article 6 of the Geneva Convention. We're going back to this because now we're going to talk about the war crimes that are going on. And the part that I wanted to, we already talked about this, so the only thing I want to bring out is the articles. We're not going to talk about all of these articles, but the articles that apply for the duration of the occupation are 1 to 12, 27, 29 to 34, 47, 49, 51, 52. Those are all the ones right there. I'm not going to go through them all, but we're going to go through a bunch of them. Some of them are not the topic of this video, and so we're not going to talk about them, but we're going to talk about most of them. Article 8. Okay, protected persons may in no circumstances renounce in part or in entirety the rights secured to them by this present convention and by the special agreements referred to in the foregoing article, if such there be. And so the point being is that that they cannot get you in a contract to give up your rights. Okay, that's exactly, they can't say, well, we got them in a contract. Okay, now that don't work. Roman law, civil law, Roman law, and Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiar for itself, more properly called municipal law, to distinguish it from the law of nature and from international law. So this is all talking about Roman law. The reason they want martial law is because martial law creates civil law, and civil law they can change. Okay, nothing is absolute. Civil law means statutes. Okay, there's two main bodies of law on this planet. It's either civil law or common law. Okay, most of Europe is now civil law, but Europe originally started out martial law. And the reason they are not, it started out common law, I should say. But the reason they want the martial law is because it creates a civil law. And once they have civil law, then they have to pass statutes under martial law. Remember, I said there's no common law offenses against the United States and there's no common law offenses against the state. Well, that means that murder is perfectly okay under martial law. So they have to pass statutes. They have to pass statutes, that's civil law. They have to pass statutes that define everything. That's why they're passing literally millions of codes, rules, and regulations. And they have to define everything. Under common law, your rights are undefined. They're absolute and they're unlimited. You have unlimited. Under civil law, they're defined, okay? And they conveniently forget. That's why they can murder your babies. That's why they can do all the stuff they do, is they conveniently forget about some of the common law crimes that common law has, that like barratry, okay? Or they redefine it, okay? It's because the barratry is completely different definition than what it is at common law. In their statutes, yeah, so they don't want their liars getting put to death for selling people into slavery. Don't want that happening. And the reason they want civil laws is because they get you used to going to the government to get your remedies under their statutes. Then all they have to do is change the statute. Oh, that's easy. They just change the statute. Now you don't have that right. That's exactly what it's all about, folks. This is Article 27. So this is all civil law. Okay, this is all Roman law. But this is Article 27. This is the only thing you got right now. This is the only thing they'll enforce, because you and your neighbors and everybody out there is completely asleep at the wheel about what's going on here. And until people wake up and say enough of this crap, it's going to continue and get worse. Protected persons are entitled in all circumstances to respect for their persons, their honor, their family rights, their religious convictions and practices, and their manners and customs. They shall at all times be humanely treated, shall be protected especially against all acts of violence or threats thereof, and against insults and public curiosity. Women shall be especially protected against attack on their honor, in particular against rape and forced prostitution or any form of indecent assault. Without prejudice to the provisions relating to their state of health, age, and sex, all protected persons shall be treated with the same consideration by the party to the conflict in whose power they are, without any adverse distinction based in particular on race, religion, or political opinion. Okay, they like to go after people because of their political opinion, is one in particular, and they like to assault people with their little satanic commercial transactions. So there's a religious issue too. The political opinion, they go after people. They say he's a sovereign citizen, he's a terrorist, we're going to just go ahead and kill him. This is Article 29, Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war of 1949. The party to the conflict in whose hands protected persons may be is responsible for the treatment accorded to them by its agents, irrespective of any individual responsibility which may be incurred. So they can't, the corporation is responsible. They cannot say, well, this guy damaged you, and so you get all his property, and that's all you get. And they cannot say that. Okay, they're saying that they are responsible. They put this hired, brain-dead idiot thug in there, and turned him loose. Gave him a gun, told him to go out and assault people. No physical or moral coercion shall be exercised against protected persons, in particular to obtain information from them or from third parties. How many times have you had the pigs scream and yell at you because you haven't given them the information they were looking for? How many times have you had the pigs do all sorts of stuff, torture you? Okay, we're going to get into torture too. I know people that have been tortured, and I've been tortured. Article 31, Geneva Convention, relative to the treatment of civilians in time of war. And so that's one example of coercion to get information. But what about the NSA and the CIA and Facebook and the banksters compelling disclosure of social security numbers? That's all coercion too. Okay, and so again, another war crime. Okay, another war crime. Article 32, Geneva Convention, relative to the treatment of civilians in a time of war. The high contracting parties specifically agree that each of them is prohibited from taking any measure of such a character as to cause physical suffering or extermination of protected persons in their hands. This prohibition applies not only to murder, torture, corporal punishment, mutilation, and medical or scientific experiments not necessitated by the medical treatment of a protected person, but also to any other measures of brutality, whether applied by civilian or military agents. Okay, and so that would covers a whole bunch of stuff there, and so they are doing that, certainly. With what about all of these compelled vaccinations? That's a good example right there. That's a war crime, the compelled vaccinations. No protected person may be punished for an offense he or she has not personally committed. Collective penalties, likewise, all measures of intimidation or terrorism are prohibited. Well, first of all, I mean, you saw the picture with all of the pigs in their military uniforms with their military vehicles. Well, that's terrorism, okay? I mean, these people are the terrorists, okay? They are creating this war on terror. That's exactly what they're doing. They're trying, a military uniform is designed to be intimidating. The colors on police vehicles, all of that is designed to be intimidating. And the fact that they carry guns, especially if you're in an area like New York or someplace like that where guns are not allowed, that's intimidating too. That's all designed to be intimidating. Pillage. That's when they steal your house, like in a foreclosure. The reason I even found out about this, quite frankly, is a friend of mine sent me a 1,000-page document that a lawyer had put together for his client who had his house repossessed by Deutsche Bank. So this was a document that was served on the Attorney General for Germany, and they were saying that this guy had his house pillaged. And I don't know the outcome of that thing. But that's a war crime, and when a lawyer puts it together, it's got to be it's pretty good. Anyways, reprisals against protected persons and their property are prohibited. That's Article 33. Okay, again, that's the sovereign citizen thing, or the freeman on the land. They're taking reprisals against you and your property, stealing your property. In Canada, the pigs steal people's vehicles all the time if they're not registered, and so that's reprisals. Terrorism, a system of government that seeks to rule by intimidation. Okay, that's what these Satanists do. That's what these pigs do. Okay, they rule by intimidation. That's exactly what's going on. Can you spot the terrorists? I can see a whole bunch of them there. And now terrorism is the noun, the use of violence and intimidation in the pursuit of political aims. Okay, that's where the terrorists are. And the sooner we, the people, figure this out, the better. The taking of hostages is prohibited. Well, when they go and deport your wife because maybe she's not doesn't have a green card, then but at common law it is, however, true in all common law countries and always and consistently been held that the wife and minor children take the nationality of the husband and father. That's common law doctrine. So she, because she's your wife, is an American, and so they go and kick her out of the country. That's holding her hostage until you accept their U.S. citizen slave scam, and that's exactly what they're doing, and that's how these pigs operate. Okay, these people are pigs. They are the lowest form of life there is. Or another thing is holding you hostage until you sign their plea bargain. Okay, yeah, that's another thing, and so again, that's a hostage taking. That's a war crime. Protected persons who are in occupied territory should not be deprived in any case or any matter whatsoever of the benefits of the present convention by any change introduced as a result of the occupation of a territory into the institutions or government of the said territory, or nor by any agreement concluded between the authorities of the occupied territories and the occupying power, nor by any annexation to the latter of the whole or part of the occupied territory. In other words, they can't say, well, we just did agreement here, and so this doesn't apply anymore. BS. The occupying power may not compel protected persons to serve in its armed or auxiliary forces. No pressure or propaganda which aims at securing voluntary enlistment is prohibited. Well, actually, if you read those selective service application forms, none of them apply to anybody. But they are engaging in propaganda and pressure to get people to sign up in high schools and with mandatory registration for selective service when you get a driver's license, all of that stuff. And so that's a war crime. Are you tired of the kangaroo courts? Are you tired of the extortion they call taxes? Are you tired of schools that don't teach? Are you tired of corrupt bureaucrats? Are you tired of revenue officers masquerading as peace officers? Are you tired of victimless crimes? Are you tired of the police state? Are you tired of seeing people murdered on TV just about every night? Are you tired of not really owning your land? Are you tired of the Satanism that seems to be everywhere? Are you tired of being compelled to work for the government by being compelled to provide a government employee's social security number even when you're not really working for the government? The Republic of Texas is alive and well and here to offer you a peaceful alternative to the current tyranny being posed by the Roman cult owned and operated District of Columbia. And I want to stress peaceful, okay? And we have the law on our side, so there's no reason to be doing anything violent. We have the law on our side. So, you know, anybody that says anything else is a fearmonger. Bix Weir, what do they call it? Oh man, he has it's yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but anyways, yeah, they're fearmongers. Okay, we offer you a peaceful alternative, and you can contact us, and we'll tell you all about it. To find like-minded people who are interested in good government, freedom, independence, go to thetexasrepublic.com. To find out how you can participate in your lawful government, go to thetexasrepublic.com. Either your rights come from God or they come from government. There's only two forms of government, systems of law on this planet, and it's civil law or common law. The civil law is where the rights come from government and they're defined, and it's because of martial law, military occupation. Common law is based on the Bible, quite frankly. It's natural law, okay? Natural law, the law of nature, law of the land, okay? And that's where you're going to be free. That's the only way you can do it. The only way we can be free is with Christian government, because it's based on the premise that all rights come from God. Rights that come from government are Roman law and will result in your slavery. I remember in Canada, I've been up there a few times, and once in a while you hear the communists come out and say they want to take God out of the Constitution. Well, of course the communists want to do that, because if you take God out of the Constitution, then that takes away the possibility that our rights come from God, and that they come from government. And so then they can just once they come from government, they can take it away. Okay, they just a little bit here, a little bit there, and they're very patient. And the next thing you know, you wake up a slave. And that's because all of these brain dead idiots out here that are too stupid to figure out what's going on. They're drinking that fluoridated water. That's another reason there's a war crime going on. They're poisoning people with this fluoridated water. Roman law is satanic. Roman law has nothing to do with freedom and everything to do with slavery. The rights that come from government are Roman law and will result in your slavery. This is Article 52 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in time of war. No contract, agreement, or regulation shall impair the right of any worker, whether voluntary or not, and wherever he may be, to apply to the representatives of the protecting power in order to request the said power's intervention. All measures aimed at creating unemployment or restricting opportunities offered to workers in an occupied territory in order to induce them to work for the occupying power are prohibited. So again, There's some really good stuff here, and that's exactly what they do. Of course, Trump has been trying to change that, but Obama was real bad at that. I mean, they go and fabricate these numbers. Trump has got a long ways to go. Well, there's no doubt about it. But I've been out of work for 5 years, so I can tell you with firsthand knowledge. But but Trump is trying to make a difference. He's fighting these communists that are riddled, that are everywhere. Obama put them in. Anyways, this is Article 53, Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of civilians in the time of war of 1949. Any destruction by the occupying power of real or personal property belonging individually or collectively to private persons or to the state or to other public authorities or to social or cooperative organizations is prohibited except where such destruction is rendered absolutely necessary by military operations. And so, again, when they steal your property, then that's a violation of Article 53. Article 66, in the case of a breach of penal provisions promulgated by it by virtue of the second paragraph of Article 64, the occupying power may hand over the accused to its properly constituted non-political military courts on condition the said courts sit in the occupied country. Courts of appeal shall preferably sit in the occupied country. That's Article 66. Non-political. Okay, they're all military, but they're all bought and paid for. The state parties to the present covenant, including those having responsibility for the administration of non-self-governing and trust territories, shall promote the realization of the right of self-determination. Okay, and that's the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 1, Clause 3. And so that's what we in the Republic of Texas are moving ahead with, is our right to self-determination. And they have to honor that. An International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 14, Clause 1. All persons shall be equal before the courts and tribunals in the determination of any criminal charge against him or of his rights and obligations in a suit at law. Everyone shall be entitled to a fair and public hearing by a competent, independent, and impartial tribunal established by law. Okay, so they have to be neutral and unbiased. When they're bought and paid for, like we were talking earlier, then it's a war crime. Article 69, Geneva Convention. In all cases, the duration of the period during which a protected person accused of an offense is under arrest awaiting trial or punishment shall be deducted from any period of imprisonment awarded. And so I know people that they didn't do that. So again, that's a war crime. This is the Rome Statute on the International Criminal Court. And the United States hasn't adopted this, but it's important because it talks about the Geneva Conventions. And for the purposes of this statute, crime against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. Enslavement, imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law, torture, persecution against any identifiable group. Okay, gee, that sounds like freemen on the land or sovereign citizens. They're persecuting them, certainly, or collectively on political, racial, national. Okay, they don't like those state citizens. They want to assault people. Ethnic, cultural, religious, gender as applied in paragraph 3. And so anyways, that's Article 7 of the Rome Statute. War is business. It's all about business. These people are Satanists. They're thieves. This is Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. His right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in a community with others or in public or private to manifest a religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. And so that's where I know people that have gone into these kangaroo courts and said, I don't wish to participate in your little religious ceremony. And they said, get his butt out of here. In Canada, they're persecuting anybody they call a freeman on the land. In the USA, they persecute sovereign citizens. When a judge is a bought and paid for a clerk, it's a satanic religious ceremony. They're persecuting you because of your wish not to participate in their Satanism. When a judge is a bought and paid for a clerk, it's not a fair and regular trial. When it is civil and they're saying it's criminal, it's not a fair and regular trial. It's a kangaroo court. Article 70. Protected persons shall not be arrested, prosecuted, or convicted by the occupying power for acts committed or for opinions expressed before the occupation or during a temporary interruption thereof, with the exception of the breaches of the laws and customs of war. Okay, so really that's the only thing they can go after you for, which is a breach of the peace, right? Breaches of the laws and customs of war. If you don't do anything to hurt anybody, there's nothing they can do. Nationals of the occupying power who, before the outbreak of hostilities, have sought refuge in the territory of the occupied states shall not be arrested, prosecuted, convicted, or deported from the occupied territory except for offenses committed after the outbreak of hostilities, or, and this is talking a bit, or for offenses under common law committed before the outbreak of hostilities, which according to the law of the occupied state would have justified extradition in a time of peace. In other words, what they're saying is that martial law supersedes common law. That's what they're saying. I mean, read that. That's exactly what it says. No sentence shall be pronounced by the competent courts of the occupying power except after a regular trial. That's Article 71. And you are entitled to a neutral and unbiased judge. That's what a regular trial is. Check out our other videos. Texas and other American states is under a military occupation. Christian principles of government equals freedom. Republic of Texas documentary by RT Television Network. Republic of Texas Embassy in Paris. Rebirth of a Nation, full-length unlawful property taxes in Texas. And Republic of Texas Forum 2016. Warning, this is the standing army you were warned not to tolerate. Collective penalties and all measures of intimidation or terrorism are prohibited. That's Article 33 of the Geneva Convention relative to protection of civilians in a time of war of 1949. Military uniforms are designed to be intimidating. The carrying of guns by their code enforcers is intimidating, especially if they have laws preventing you from owning guns. Well, that means you can't even defend yourself against the pigs. If the pig yells at you because you're not cooperating, it's threatening and intimidating. No protected persons may be punished for an offense he or she is not personally committed. That's what they're doing when they're assaulting you with their cestui trust. Collective penalties and likewise all measures and intimidation of terrorism are prohibited. Pillage is prohibited. Reprisals are prohibited. They're assaulting you for the crimes of their fraudulently created cestui trust. And in Canada, they regularly seize people that are vehicles that are not registered. Everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others, and no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. Okay, well, that's martial law. And that's Article 17, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And your rights are property as well. So they cannot just take away your rights. Any restraint, however slight, upon another's liberty to come and go as one pleases constitutes an arrest. An illegal arrest is an assault and battery. The person so attempted to be restrained of his liberty has the same right to use force in defending himself as he would in repelling any other assault and battery. Each person has the right to resist an unlawful arrest. In such a case, the person attempting the arrest stands in the position of a wrongdoer and may be resisted by the use of force as in self-defense. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Okay, that's Article 9 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and they do that shit all the time. Excuse my French. This is the Rome Statute on the International Criminal Court, Article 8, war crimes. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I talked about it earlier, but this is where it talks about the Geneva Conventions. And so all you really need, you ought to be able to, because the United States hasn't acceded to this statute, that you cannot bring an action against anyone in the United States based on in the International Criminal Court. But you still could probably bring an action in federal courts if you can find a judge that doesn't want to be a bought and paid for a clerk masquerading as a judge. That's the question. The court shall have jurisdiction in respect to war crimes, in particular when committed as part of a plan or policy. For the purpose of the statute, war crimes means grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions of 12 August 1949, namely any of the following acts against persons or property. Extensive. Now, the list is quite a bit more lengthy than this. I've just taken out a few things that I thought would be or could be used by people in Texas right now. Extensive destruction and appropriation of property not justified by military necessity and carried out unlawfully and wantonly. Compelling a prisoner of war or other protected person to serve in the forces of a hostile power. Willfully depriving a prisoner of war or other protected person of the rights in fair and regular trial. Unlawful deportation or transfer or unlawful confinement. All of those are going on right now. Other serious violations are intentionally directing attacks against, that sounds like reprisals, okay? Individuals not taking part in the hostilities, okay? Intentionally directing attacks against civilian objects that are not military objectives, intentionally launching an attack in the knowledge that such attack will cause incidental injury to civilians and damage to civilian objects, which would be clearly excessive in relation to the concrete and direct overall military advantage anticipated. Destroying or seizing the enemy's property unless such destruction or seizure may be imperatively demanded by the necessities of war. Declaring abolished, suspended, or inadmissible in the court of law the rights or actions of the nationals of the hostile party. Okay, so they won't allow you to file your paperwork or something like that, then that's a violation of right there. Pillaging a town or place even when taken by assault, committing outrages on the personal dignity, and particular humiliating and degrading treatment. And so, again, all of this stuff could be used today. For the purposes of this statute, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Well, that's where they force you, they assault you with their U.S. citizen slave and won't let you tell them that you're a state citizen and not a U.S. citizen. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Okay, there's all sorts of people that are contacting me for that, and where CPS steals their children. And Carl Lentz had his son stolen after and got him back after like 11 years. In Canada, they're engaging in genocide against freemen on the land. In the U.S., it's genocide against sovereign citizens. If they steal your children because you don't want to register them, that's a form of genocide. War is when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. America was founded by tough hellraisers, rugged citizens who evaded taxes, spoke strongly against tyranny, grew tobacco, brewed beer and spirits, smuggled weapons, and it will be saved by only those same type of people. The original assault rifle, 1774, banned from import. 1775, British attempt confiscation. 1776, revolution. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.